Hi, we three are doing storytelling differently. And I hope you like this trailer to start off with. It has a little music in it. But Barbara Czarniawska, who passed away recently, Yiannis Gabriel, and myself, David Boje, we do storytelling differently. And I want to point out some of those differences today in this video. I hope you're going to like it. It's about organizational storytelling, and Barbara Czarniawska is, I think, the queen of narrative. Yiannis Gabriel is focused on folklore and mythology and Greek legends and amazing work. And then my own work is on kind of living stories and antenarratives and microstoria, all kinds of things. So I'm going to try to give you three different perspectives, and what I've done in my life is try to be complementary to the both of them. Thank you. Well, I miss Barbara, and I really enjoy the times when we could keynote together, and I could see her presentations, and we could go to lunch and dinner. And same with Yiannis Gabriel. It was way fascinating to be able to have dinner with you and stay at a chalet somewhere. It was great. We did the circuit, And anyway, Barbara, miss you. So give us a like, a subscribe, and share. What I'm going to do now is it's called Doing Storytelling Differently. Barbara Czarniawska, who passed away just recently this year, Yiannis Gabriel, and myself, David Boje. We are each very different in our approaches, but we agree that the process of narrative, story, and anti-narrative are a never-ending construction and reconstruction. Barbara Czarniawska, we miss you, your work. I'm going to pull out 3 books from each of us, and for today I've chosen Narrating the Organization, a Narrative Approach to Organization Studies, and Actor Network Theory and Organizing with Terse. The narrative approach to organization studies is a very widely used and very popular book. Barbara says a narrative in its most basic form requires at least 3 elements: an original state of affairs, an action or an event, and the consequent state of affairs. For them to become a narrative, she continues, they require a plot. That is, some way to bring them into a meaningful whole. The easiest way to do this is by introduction of chronology. She really answers that question, a very tough question I get asked a lot, and I'm sure those of you study this do too. What's the difference between discourse analysis and conversational analysis? And Barbara just hones right in on it. Discourse, from the discurrere, I guess, to run about, formal and orderly, usually extended expression of thought on a subject. Discourse analysis, like Foucault and Barthes, discourse is impersonal, no actors, talkers are visible or are they needed. Conversational analysis, conversation from the converser, to live, to keep company with, obsolete conduct, behavior, oral exchange of sentiments, observations, opinions, or ideas. Ethnomethodology, that's Harold Garfinkel. Actors, talkers are visible and central. Another book, Narrating the Organization's Dramas of Institutional Identity, has a strong focus on Kenneth Burke's work. He's got the pentad, the 5 elements: agent, purpose, scene, agency, and act. So an agent representing the interests of others, not one's own interest, for example. A purpose, simple motives. The scene consists of a static role structure, friends, enemies, bad guys, good guys, progressive, conservatives, cons and dupes. Agency, observing the well-known, albeit unwritten rules, repeating successful tricks. So Burke develops his act-scene ratios, etc. Check out 1945 book. Barbara Czarniawska's later work, there's a book with Hearns, but I'm going to cite from a 2017 article she did, picks up on Bruno Latour's actor network theory, and she starts to get something very close to my heart, which is the relation of space and time and action nets. Now, actor network theory, you have actors and material actants, right? And they're networking. So that's the theory. The topics I wish to address, says Barbara in this paper, are the contest between chronological and kairotic time in contemporary organizing and the emergences of dispersed calculation as opposed to calculation centers, postulated by Calhoun, 1988, and Latour, 1999. Those of you who have seen Jerry McCullough's video that I did, she's very passionate about kairotic time and very scholarly. It should be presenting something on that at the annual conference here in December. Okay, Yiannis Gabriel. We go way back, the three of us, but Yiannis Gabriel and I, we do keynotes, we stay in the same hotels. We used to sit up and drink at night. Well, it's just water, right? So Yiannis Gabriel, 1999, Organizations in Depth, and their storytelling in Organizations, 2000, Greek Myths for a Post-Truth World. These are 3 books I picked out. He's got many more. Check them out. So, Organizations in Depth, he's writing about the unity of the self in the face of such conflicts is problematic. And I do videos on this myself. Individuals may be at times experience themselves as wholesome, unified, and centered. In reality, however, such unity is a result of psychological work in the presence of forces which seek to break the self apart, to decenter it. And he goes on and talks about Freud's work and the id and the instincts, the pleasure principle. A lot of his work at the EGOS conference, European Group for Organizational Studies, has been focused on this psychoanalytic turn. His Storytelling in Organizations book, classic, really recommend it. It's about story, but story to be performed, to be passionate, to be whole. So story, he says, shares a common etymology with history. They both derive from the Greek group of words and include histos, meaning web, and histani, meaning to stand, and eviente, meaning to know. Storytelling is an art of weaving, of constructing the product of intimate knowledge. It's a delicate process, a process that can easily break down, failing to live up to its promise, disintegrating into mere text. And he talks about what are good stories and how valuable they are, and what are bad stories. And he thinks some of my work as bad stories. We'll get a look at that in a second, but it's all good-natured fun. Well, here it is now. He says, my article in 91, his key findings that people told their stories in bits and pieces, and excessive interruptions of story parts, and people talking over each other. Yeah, I tape recorded meetings for 8 months in a corporation. Boje describes stories, Yiannis continues, he collected as terse and acknowledges that in all his transcripts, hardly a single story bears repetition outside of its home territory as a good story. And he offers only one story, and this is what Yiannis put in his book. Doug, the recently appointed CEO, is almost his first meeting with the executives, uprooted or reserved for the CEO. One was also reserved for each of the VP's parking sign, and threw it on the executive table. He ripped out the sign. He threw it on the table in the conference room, demanding to know who put this sign. Who put up this sign? This is not the kind of leadership I will have around here. The offending executive for this and other good reasons was fired by the week's end. Well, there was some pretty good reasons. Check out the article. One suspects that Boje, Yiannis continues, is driven by the conclusions that because of his commitment to viewing organizations as storytelling systems, or I say storytelling organizations also, does not square with the anemic quality of the stories he collected. Yet in taking this extreme position, and the strength of Boje's argument lies in its extremism, thank you, Yiannis, Boje loses the very qualities that he cherishes. Oh no! So, his recent work, 2024, Greek Myths for a Post-Truth World, isn't this really appropriate? And he goes into Greek myths and the loss of truth with social media in our political situation, particularly in the United States, is my focus. He's taking a more general view. One thing that Greek myths can certainly do, says Yiannis, is act as fountains of meaning in our post-truth times, when meaning itself becomes precarious and fragmented. The quest for meaning, isn't that true in our personal life? It's hard to have the quest for meaning in a post-truth world. And so really like this book a lot. And thank you, Yiannis, for writing it. He continues and talks about how this book does not seek to diminish or neutralize scientific knowledge, but in its small way tries to restore myth as a vital part of our day-to-day existence. I think this has been part of Yiannis's career. They are able to reach further, awakening in us a sense of awe and rupture in the face of the mysteries we face individually and collectively. So we have to ask, is this time we're living through in the United States Shakespeare Macbeth? Is it some other kind of Greek tragedies? Love to hear your comments. Put them in the comments section, will you? Okay, my own work. I picked out just 3 books. There's others. Each of us has many other books. But the Narrative Methods book, 2019, and a recent book, Management Thought of Louis Ralph Pondy by myself and Ronnie Sailors. And Ronnie Sailors just took over the project when I got older and didn't want to fuss with editing anymore. Anyway, Narrative Methods, and I say traditionally the story has been viewed as less than narrative. Narrative requires plot as well as coherence. In narrative theory, story is folksy without implotment, a simple telling of chronology. So I propose anti-narrative. Anti-narrative is the fragmented, nonlinear, incoherent, collective, unplotted, and pre-narrative speculation of bet. To traditional narrative methods, anti-narrative is an improper storytelling, a wager, right? That a proper narrative can be constituted. Narrative tries to stand as elite, to be above the story, right? And I think Yiannis and I don't like that part of it. And I don't think that Barbara Czarniawska did either, particularly in her later work. The crisis of narrative method, what to do with nonlinear, almost living storytelling that is fragmented, polyphonic, many-voiced, collectively produced. My response is to stretch the traditional approach by including what I call anti-narrative methods. The focus is on the analysis of stories that are too unconstructed and fragmented to be analyzed in traditional approaches. And I keep going on about the chaotic soup we're in. So this has been a project for over 20 years, and I'll give you some closure here. So I started out giving anti-narrative this double meaning as being before and as bet, and then the story as an ante meaning coming before, and the bet to narrative, anti-narrative, and it's something to be narrated. Story is an account of incidents or events, and I think the three of us overlap in that understanding. And story is an ante, a beforeness, a state of affairs existing previously to narrative. Now here, some of my colleagues have asked me to go back to my earlier work where I treat narrative as more dynamic, and I'll get to that in a second. Okay, so I look at narratology, I'm looking at ontologies, right, ways of being in the world, epistemologies, ways of knowing, and methodologies, ways of studying. And I go through kind of the history of narrative work, but so does Barbara Czarniawska, and so does Yiannis Gabriel, but in different ways. So check it out. Now, the book I did with Grace Ann Roselle, How to Use Conversational Storytelling Interviews, comes after our trips to New Zealand, of the Maori, and they had a really good library there, and had all the volumes of Charles Saunders Peirce, and I got really into looking at that and looking at here's an example of dialogical and anti-dialogical work, right? And dialectical and anti-dialectical. I couldn't resist making a table about indigenous ways of knowing and that are dialogical but dialectical by splitting apart. And the anti-dialectical, almost said anti, is the Western ways of knowing, and the anti-dialogical and dialectical, right? Western ways of knowing a certain type. Anyway, I kind of have been playing a lot with those, but like I said, I'm going back to my roots a bit. Conversational storytelling, making it dialectical and dialogical, right? So this dialectical is Paulo Freire, and dialogical is, of course, Mikhail Bakhtin. And when I made this table, I'm crossing the two ideas together. So my wife says in the book, let David be blunt. I'm kind of known for that. Semi-structured interviews are the tool and apparatus of cultural invasion, conquest, colonialization, manipulation, and entrap both oppressor and oppressed. Yeah, I was reviewing the Hawthorne studies, and like Yiannis said, you need a psychoanalytic understanding in your research, and the Hawthorne studies had to throw out their transcribed interviews because it was just junk, and they had to go back in with the psychoanalytic approach. And I talk about this. And Linda Hutchin, shout out to you for work on Untold Stories, and appreciate the work you're doing. So Bakhtin has all kinds of dialogisms that I've spent a long time researching, theorizing. You've got the polyphonic many voices, you've got the stylistics, many different styles, a written style, verbal style, etc. And you have the architectronic, which is kind of the architecture of kind of a bigger look at storytelling. And then Mikhail Bakhtin is extending Kant's work on architectronic, but taking it way further. And I really appreciate that. So anyway, chronotopes. I've written about this with in articles with Usha Haley and Ronnie Sailors about Burger King and especially McDonald's, the chronotope of the clown rogue fool, for example. You could check out stuff like that. Now, where anti-narrative really came together for me is in the 2024 book, and thank you, Ronnie, for editing it and getting it out to print. The Management Thought of Louis Ralph Ponty. He was my mentor. Here you see a beautiful drawing of Ponty from the work of the artist Sabine Trofimo, and thank you for contributing that. Lou is very famous for this model. In 1966, in his dissertation, 67 in the Administrative Science Quarterly, What I did is read every piece of work, every conference presentation, my notes, my class notes when I was in the PhD program. So, and Lou died early, I think he's about 49 when he died. And in his last speech, he said to the Academy manager, said, "This model is wrong. It's, it's right that there's episodes of conflict and you have latent and manifest and etc. And that big loop to the right, actually ASQ left out the big loop. It's just kind of interesting. So I'm checking it all out, but in his last speech, Pondy says, "Look, I thought that organizations were cooperative systems." They're not. They're conflict systems. That's their natural state, is to be in conflict. And here I am trying to manage conflict as kind of the exception, but really conflict is the rule and cooperation is the exception. Organizations are anarchy. And he admitted that with tears in his eyes, and really respect Lou for his honesty. Okay, this is how in the book on Lou Pondy, I pulled together the 7 B's of anti-narrative, and here I'm relating them to the 4s, 4 being meaning coming before, from Martin Heidegger's work. And Ronnie Saylors and I have been working on this project and publishing things in Entrepreneurship and other places with him and his colleagues, and him by himself, and I applaud that. Anyway, so Lou Pondy taught me thinking. He taught me how to think and theorize and how to dance different theories together. And I really appreciate his training. And so the book is about that training and about his work. And I wanted somebody to really understand the storytelling and the narration, the assemblage of his work. And there's something called Enthinkment, which we have an Enthinkment circle that meets every week on Tuesday. And we have great discussions about how to think and how to question our sense making. So that's what we're doing on Enthinkment. Going back to my roots, I've been asked to do by my colleagues because, when I was working with established Barbara Czarniawska is there, kind of the queen of narrative, and then you got Yiannis Gabriel, the king of the story liveness, and then there's me, and I'm going like, okay, what am I going to do that's different from what they're doing? So this book, I started out with deconstruction, then grand narrative. Barbara deals with grand narrative as well, work of Lyotard. Microstoria, I got from the Italians doing the analysis of people, the little people they get left out of the bigger narratives, that are done by the military or the president or whatnot. And these are the people that resisted whatever the grand narrative movement. So it's like if you're the only Republican in a Democratic territory, or you're the only Democrat in a Republican territory, and there's red signs and everything all around, it's how do you have your true self, that self that Yiannis Gabriel talks about. Intertextuality story network analysis later on, that fits well with Barbara's work on using Bruno Latour and actor network theory, something very popular with me too. Intertextuality with Julia Kristeva's work, doing a causality analysis, basic notions of how stories carry theories and grand narratives carry theories, etc. And plots, many plots are happening. And again, that extends well from both my colleagues' work, theme analysis, etc. So that there were 8 chapters, and I used anti-narrative going through all of them. Now, what I've done just in this week is sort of revisit how I develop a figure for this. And here I've got a kind of a spiral that twists upwards and twists downwards, and really time goes in any direction here. And there's loops. you have the anti-narrative loop back, and it's a constructing of narratives and stories, and you got the microstoria loop, those loops of the people whose stories often don't get told. As Linda Hitchens says, they're untold stories. But microstoria, these are the brave people that go against the trends, and they speak truth to power, and they were people that were being witch hunted, that were being sought after, and it's exactly these same people that would be moved out of the United States should Trump win the election. Hopefully not. Because we need to get out of this pro-truth society and understand this relationship between these grand narratives politicians use and counter narratives, where we get down to the psychoanalytic, but also the factual, and the microstory. Always include the little people. So I'm into spirals, but I'm also into the very rhizomatic notion. So this has been a presentation about 3 storytellers that have some differences. Barbara Czarniawska, Yiannis Gabriel, myself, David Boje. Barbara is on narrative, Yiannis story, myth, many other things, post-truth, anti-narrative, my work. And we agree that the process of narrative, story, and anti-narrative are never-ending construction and reconstruction. And we're doing storytelling differently. So give us a like, give us a subscribe, make a comment. If you make a comment, I'll try to make a video. Share it with your friends and enemies, and you have a wonderful day. Thank you.